Public parks and beaches are among the few places in any country that belong in principle to everyone. They are where children play, families gather, vendors earn a living, and communities find room to breathe. They also form part of the face the Bahamas presents to the millions who visit our shores. But behind every clean beach, repaired playground, and well-maintained community park is a public system, one funded by taxpayers and expected to operate with discipline, fairness, and accountability. Tonight, we examine that system. Following years of questions surrounding spending, maintenance, and transparency, the Public Parks and Beaches Authority has entered what its new executive chairman calls a new era. And we ask that question because we want to know what will make this era truly different. What are the priorities? And how will its new chairman balance a national mandate with his continuing responsibility to the people of Nassau Village? Tonight, we put those questions on the record. Stay tuned as we get started on the other side of this break. All right, welcome to On the Record. Our guest tonight is Jamahl Strachan. He's a member of Parliament for the Nassau Village Constituency, as well as the newly appointed executive chairman of the Public Parks and Beaches Authority. In this first segment, I want to examine the organization's true scope. Jamahl, welcome. They have him, Mr. Strong.
It's fine.
Welcome to our show. Welcome to our studio. This is your first time in here.
It's my first time.
And one of the reasons I reached out to you is because, well, two things. Obviously, beaches and parks has been in the news quite a bit, and we'll get into that. But I noticed that there were quite a few initiatives that you were doing, and you were in the newest cycle. And part of what we do on this show is to, take those issues that we have the blurbs in for news and try to spend a little time in this space discussing. So that's one of the reasons we wanted you to come on and talk today. So welcome. We have a lot to talk about. So let's jump into it. For Bahamians who may only associate the authority with cutting grass and cleaning beaches, what is the complete mandate?
So, Jerome, first and foremost, we're more than just cutting grass. That's our new hashtag. That's something that we're pushing forward so that the entire population understands the gravity of our contribution to national development. We not only look after the verges, but we also look at the environmental health of the island itself. That's your beaches, that's your green spaces, in many capacities, as simple as billboards being everywhere. We've seen a prominence of billboards in marketing, and also just overall care of the island itself to make sure it's not only aesthetically pleasing, but to ensure that it's safe and friendly to not only Bahamians, but visitors alike.
So you mentioned the impact on the environment. So what is the distinction or the difference between beaches, public parks and beaches, and the Ministry of Environment and Natural Resources?
Yeah, so public parks and beaches actually comes under the umbrella of the Ministry of Environment and Environmental Health. Mm-hmm. So we're harmonized and we synergize our efforts while the Ministry of Environment focus on the entire archipelago, the entire country. Bahamas Public Parks and Beaches focuses on New Providence and actually the coastal areas, but also the green spaces on island, as well as in conjunction with the Ministry of Works.
And why is it important and help the public to understand why is it important to have an authority just to deal with those issues. And the reason I ask, like, it's growing up, people just used to cut the grass and clean the beach. But now, it is, and it is an important part, obviously, of the aesthetics, but some other things. So why is it important for this authority to exist unto itself, although it's under the banner of the Ministry of Environment?
I got you. Well, while we were growing up, every Sunday we would go out, we would clean our yards, whether you had grass or whether you had dirt, we would rake it. And that was
for some of us, it was punishment.
So cleanliness is inherently Bahamian, right? The reality is that it goes beyond that now. Our tourism product, the success of it, the health of it, is predicated on the landscape and the environment at large. So the government saw it fit to create an entity that focuses solely on ensuring that that particular product, that particular asset, because of what it yields overall toward the national development, is given the attention that it actually needs. It's given the support to ensure that it not only benefits Bahamians, but it also benefits us economically as well.
So outside of the routine landscaping, sanitation, what other services, or are there other services that fall under the remit of the authority?
Well, we actually create parks and beaches. So there are communities that normally have a town planning. And they have the site map and they have a green space. Well, in certain communities where there might have been minimal town planning, the authority can go in and designate a green space to be created, designate a park to be created, so that it also helps the standard of living for those residents around it. The parks and beaches also can designate an area to be looked at as a protected area as well. So it's wide, it's very wide.
Protected from development?
Protected from development. So we would send the recommendation up to the Ministry of Environment to look at this particular area or this particular space, and they would make the categorization or classification that, okay, this should be restricted from any further development. Right.
Very important. So how does the authority function, or does it function in conjunction with those communities that may have their own parks? Because over the years there have been some communities that have developed spaces, their own parks, their own areas. Do you work in conjunction with them, or how does that work?
So as it stands right now, public parks and beaches. So our remit is only focused on the public parks, right? So any community or development that has a private park, while we don't have direct oversight or influence over it, we use our best practices and our standards for them to also maintain their parks. So you may see parks that have high-end development or amenities, and then you may see a standard public park that is usable, pretty beautiful, but that's the minimum standard, right? So we kind of use ourselves as that gradient, as that standard for all parks on the island.
So in other words, this should be your standard if you have a
this is your standard.
Okay, understood. Now we've talked about parks, so let's talk about beaches. And the work that the authority does with beaches and the maintenance of those beaches. What does that involve?
So most recently, we would have attempted to restore or bring to usable standard Goodman's Bay. You would have also seen us engaging Montague Beach, Montague Foreshore, the Sloop Foreshore. We actually go to those beaches following regattas, following any type of use, and ensure that it's clean, but also ensure that it's presentable for Bahamians and tourists alike. We actually have started beach raking, beach cleaning. Now, the important thing about that is that I initially came in and I said, okay, we would get a machine, we would do the beach sieving, and we would ensure that all beaches are completely devoid of seaweed. But following that same engagement with the Ministry of Environment, I was advised from a scientific level that there needs to be a type of monitoring and managing of that particular seaweed collection, because it actually helps the environment. So that's that symbiotic and harmonization relationship between us and the Ministry of Environment that I was talking about.
So from your perspective, the seaweed was an eyesore. And then they went, hold on a minute, can't move all of the seaweed. Interesting. And beyond that, I mean, cleaning it up, are there other things that you do relative to the beaches to ensure the maintenance, accessibility, those kinds of things?
Yeah, so we have a mandate to ensure public access to all beaches. Now, as we develop, the Bahamas becomes more popular, and of course, we have infrastructural creation along the foreshore. Sometimes these investors, these developers neglect to ensure that there's public access that is mandatory.
That's a long-standing problem.
Mandatory.
Yes.
So a part of our mandate is to ensure that the access is given to the public, right? So we act as a oversight and as a monitoring agency as well. Now, we ensure that there are receptacles there to discard of it. We have daily trash collection and removal, especially along the western corridor, the tourism corridor. Going back to what I said, the economic and tourism product needs to be enhanced, but also supported. So those are the ongoing initiatives.
I can tell you, as someone who used to run and exercise on the Goodman's Bay Beach, many mornings, I encountered all manner of trash out there, especially on a Monday. It was really, a lot of times you just have to navigate your way sometimes for the amount of trash. So daily you guys are out there cleaning up.
Daily we're out there collecting trash from the bins, but also we act as a permitting and monitoring agency for the vendors who also make a livelihood from being on the beaches.
So what are some of the, when you say monitoring, what are some of the things that you, or the rules that you implement for those vendors? Because we see a lot of vendors now on beaches.
So we have permanent beach wardens there, and we have security, and we have the lifeguards as well. All of those are deployed agents of Bahamas Public Parks and Beaches, right? So the wardens act as, like I said, that monitoring factor, ensure that the vendors are compliant, ensuring that once, let's say, you sell a pina colada, they are supposed to dispose of that, not in the sand, but in the receptacles, because parks and beaches, the truckers come to collect the waste product to ensure that the beaches are clean. We also ensure that we have lifeguards on those beaches as well to preserve life. Most people don't know lifeguards are actually provided by Bahamas Public Parks and Beaches as well. Again, monitoring and ensuring that everyone is safe while using these public assets.
Are you responsible also, talk about the members, are you responsible for ensuring there's law and order on those beaches as well? Because I do know, we've heard all the cries about, I think, the jet ski folks. That's a different topic. But in terms of vendor behavior and regulations, are you responsible for those as well?
Yeah, we have inspectors who go out in addition. So we have 3 different actors. We have your wardens, we have the lifeguards, and we also have the inspectors who go out to ensure that everything is calm and collected and safe. So let's say there's an infraction, there's an infringement, or some, let's say, aggressive behavior. That inspector then notifies the authority, and we actually write toward that particular vendor, either as a cautionary or as a punitive measure. And that's all a part of that oversight from the authority's standpoint.
That's interesting. And I think hearing that gives the public probably a little bit of comfort, knowing that somebody is monitoring the activities and the behavior out there. Approximately how many parks and beaches and other public spaces are in your inventory and under your management?
So, Jerome, there's an astonishing approximately 250.
Where?
250. I was amazed when I got my briefing report, and they range from very large parks, your Goodman's Bay, your Montague, all the way down to your smaller parks, your Centerville Park, and so on and so forth. They're all on the island of New Providence. They all have to be monitored. So it gives you a kind of scope of obligation of the authority. So imagine 250 assets.
250
assets.
Wow. And I'm glad you brought that up. So then how do you then determine which parks or which areas get attention? And I don't just mean the cleanup, but in terms of the repairs, the maintenance, the upgrades. How do you schedule out who's getting what? How do you determine which parks need what kind of attention?
So going back to the inspectors, right? And just to put a plug into them, they're very hardworking. They are dedicated and committed to their jobs, and we seek to support them by expanding that grouping of inspectors.
I didn't even know they existed.
They exist. And we are starting to bring more persons on to act as inspectors because of the large volume of assets that we have under our portfolio. And they actually go to all of the assets. They go to the parks, the beaches, etc. And they make notations or recommendations to the authority as to what's dilapidated, what's vandalized, what needs to be tended to, or what needs to even be improved. And then we do a kind of assessment as far as budgetary assessment, as far as what we can do realistically and how quickly we can actually accomplish that. So the inspectors play a huge role, and that's why we need to bring on more to ensure that each asset is up to standard.
How many do you have on staff now?
I think right now we have about maybe 10 to 15.
To look at 250?
To look at 250. That is why I have implored the Bahamians to exercise patience with us while we build capacity, human capacity, to accomplish and achieve our job successfully. There will be some lags here and there, but by the end of, let's say, my tenure as chairman, that particular gamut, that particular grouping will be expanded, as well as janitress, etc.
So I know as the politician you don't want to say, but I'm going to say it. The public also has a responsibility to look after these parks and beaches themselves.
I agree with you.
Okay, good. All right. You brought it up when you mentioned budget, but what are the authorities' immediate priorities for this budgetary period?
Well, I would have announced it in not in cabinet, in parliament, and I said that we need and we will reconstruct and transform and rehabilitate 5 parks per quarter. 5 parks per quarter, that gives us approximately 80 of that 250 asset count, which is a significant amount over the next 4 to 5 years, right? Everything is important as it pertains to the authority, once it falls under our purview. So we try to manage all of our resources as best as we can, and practically and pragmatically, to ensure that Bahamians are content and are pleased with the product that we're offering.
Have you considered, or is there any consideration given to public-private partnerships of some of these parks and verges and areas? You know, sometimes you see this area it's kept by or maintained by.
Yes.
Is there any consideration being given to that? We see it in other countries. You see it in the U.S. quite a bit, highways, etc., that are adopted. So is there any consideration to those kinds of partnerships that may assist you? Yeah. The reality is, your needs will never match your budget. We don't get into all of those things, but is there a consideration for that?
Well, it's actually ongoing right now. You would come down the airport corridor and you run directly into the Bahama Boulevard that's maintained by Bahama. You will go over Fusion, where Fusion is, and you will see that's operated and maintained by Simplified Lending and other private entities who have adopted roundabout and stretches of land. We will continue to work with them because, as you stated, the more hands on deck, the lighter the workload is, the more we can accomplish together.
So if there is a particular area that a company or group is interested in adopting or looking after, do they just approach the authority about it? They
just approach the authority, make a formal indication to us. We'll say what those minimum standards are. Keep in minded that roundabouts should not obstruct viewers as you traverse. Right? Drivers need to be able to see around the roundabout. So no, there won't be a 60-foot billboard or spire there.
Thank you.
There will be low-lying hedges, but it will be clean, green, and pristine.
Okay. As we sort of get towards the end of this segment, the authority has faced serious questions about its repeated budget overruns. What specifically will be different under your leadership?
Well, the thing is, as you rightfully mentioned, criticism comes, but we will never have as much resources that meet the needs, right? We spoke about 250 assets, all that have to be maintained by persons physically going out there and ensuring that they're up to standard. But I think with the increase of technology and I mean that in a kind of observation monitoring standpoint, there may be avenues where you can kind of consolidate or reduce expenditure. There's a proposal to have some more, not CCTV, but more cameras on these parks to not only ensure the upkeep, but also to provide some surveillance and security going forward. And also the deployment of physical wardens on a number of parks that might be known for being frequently vandalized for whatever reason, to protect the asset. All of that is expenditure. All of that is recurring expenses. So, we will ensure that everything is dedicated resource-wise towards making sure these assets are up to date.
So what changes would you say are being made to things like procurement, contract approval, project supervision, payment verification? These are things that raise questions about overrun. So what is being done to ensure that these things are put in place, and not just put in place, but in a place where people can see what is happening? Yeah.
Well, the reality is that they exist. There's a board. There's a Public Parks and Beaches board that actually contributes and debates, well, not really debates, but actually looks at what the major expenditure of the authority is. We've seen the authority go from writing checks, physical checks, to being a digitized payment dissemination of funds to each contractor's bank account that can actually be monitored from an accounting perspective. Under the former chairman, Honorable Mikhail Barnaby, you would have seen the creation and deployment of this exact same digital payment. And now we see an enhancement and a continuation of that. More integration with the board, more oversight. It's building on progress that's already been there.
So then again, how do you ensure that you don't find yourself back in that same position? People asking about, well, where the cost overruns, where did the money go? How do we see who got it? How do you avoid that from happening when naturally it's a distraction to work? If you are working and people are raising these questions, it is a natural distraction. How do you prevent that from happening again?
Well, the reality is persons will naturally inquire. We're naturally inquisitive people, right? So I believe the only way to resolve that is the answer. And that's where the accounting aspect comes in. Because you can ask at any given point, well, what is the expenditure here, or what might have led to that? And those would be captured in the board's notes, and that would actually be captured in the accounting expenditure. So essentially, when the question is asked, they will be answered based on the accounting or auditing report or the notes that emanate from the board's deliberation and decisions.
Speaking of audit, the authority's final audit has reportedly been completed. Is that correct?
Yeah.
When should Parliament, and by extension the Bahamian people, expect to see it?
Well, we said that, and when I say we, the authority, will release it in due course, and it will be a part of the entire auditing, not only over the last 2 years, but over the last, I think it's over the last 8 to 10 years, so that you can have a full scope of it.
So in due course, when you guys come back from summer, we expect to hear. You say due course. Give me a time frame.
Well, you'll start there. As soon as we come back from September, we'll do some consultation with Ministry of Finance, and we'll release it in segments so that the population can digest it.
Sure.
An audit report is not a one-page document. An audit report is extensive and it's laborious. So as we release it, you will be able to digest it in a meaningful way.
And if that audit identifies things like waste, weak controls, even questionable spending, are you prepared to act to do what is necessary to create that confidence in what is happening?
Well, whatever the audit might have identified, that's the only responsible approach, all right? To see how best we can streamline it to offer a better product for Bahamians. That goes without saying.
Sure. When you sit in a position like this, when a country has so many other priorities it's dealing with, when you're looking at just the cost of living, all the other things that are happening. When you get to that discussion at cabinet table, and there's so many other priorities, how do you ensure that beaches and parks gets the same level of attention?
Well, so I'm not in cabinet. So my
Sorry, well, you're minister in
Yeah.
cabinet.
Yeah.
Because I presume you're behind the minister saying,
Yes.
I can need to say double.
So I'll write to my minister as far as needs-based or needs assessment, right? Based on the technical staff reports. So inspectors tell me, Chairman, this is what we need. These are the areas that we need to improve on. My accountant looks at it. They say, this is the dollar value of what needs to happen. We take it to the board. The board says we agree. We send that to the minister, and he lobbies at cabinet, right? Priorities are relative in that a priority to me may not be a priority to you. So therefore, that's where the beauty of the government comes in, to realize that they all should be kind of intertwined, and the overall development of the country is paramount. So if that means improving the environmental aesthetics to ensure that the dollar value of your tourism product is enhanced to bring more money to more Bahamians, to improve their standard of life, then you will see a budgetary allocation increase or dissemination or distribution in that regard.
It makes a lot of sense. It's like getting your home assessed and your lawn isn't cut, or it needs to be painted. Your home needs to be painted. Obviously, going to bring down the dollar value of it. As we get ready to go into the break, what have been for you? What have been some of the major challenges since you've come to office in this particular position? What have these past few weeks been like in office? You came in, you had a budget almost immediately. You had to get to work immediately. So what has it been like for you in office since taking over?
Well, plainly put, it's been fun, right?
Okay.
Whenever I speak to the Prime Minister, he'll always ask me, how is it going? And I'll say, man, it seems to be progressing well, right? Parks and Beaches is a very unique entity in that you see immediately what decisions made look like. So if the authority decides via board consensus or approval that we want to demolish all of the dilapidated billboards, you're going to see that tomorrow. There's no delay. Okay. So that creates excitement around the authority, but also around compliance. So for me coming in, looking at the mandate, looking at the act, looking at what needs to happen, and then operationalizing or initializing that has brought a lot of attention to the authority, and it's something that I see as beneficial, but also at the end of the day, it's fun and exciting.
Yeah, I don't know how many other folks in those positions will come, but I appreciate the approach, because it means you see it not so much as a task, but certainly as a mission in many instances. Final before we go to the break. As a citizen, if I recognize that there's something wrong within my park, or something that needs to be fixed, or something that is grieving me, what can I do?
You can do one of two things. You can give Parks and Beaches a call, or you can shoot us an email. Now, in the very near future, there will be a digital platform created where you will be able to take your smartphone, log on to the app, and actively, in real time, report what the issue may be. And that's a part of the technological upgrades coming to the authority under my remit.
You don't always think about how technology can be used in some practical areas, but very good example. Public confidence will not be restored by a newly painted sign or a freshly cut lawn alone. It will demand and depend on whether Bahamians can see where their money is going. When we come back from the break, we're going to turn from the national portfolio to the constituency of Nassau Village. You're watching On the Record. Stay with us. We're back right after this. Welcome back to On the Record. We are still with our guest tonight, Jamahl Strachan. He's the executive chairman of the Bahamas Public Parks and Beaches Authority, as well as the returning Member of Parliament for the Nassau Village constituency. In this segment, I want to know what you learned from your first term and what residents should expect from the second term.
Well, thanks, Jerome. And it feels good to be a incumbent, two-time. What I would have learned was that Nassau villagers appreciate consistency and hard work. It's something that I pride myself on, my work ethic. My dad was a Kid Island man from Industrious Hill, Kid Island. You probably never heard about that a day in your life.
Just tell me the Bible. All right.
Well, but Industrious Hill is a little settlement just off of Gators in Kid Island.
Okay.
He was a retired police officer turned bus driver. And one thing that he always instilled in me was work hard. So it's something that I brought to my political life. In the absence of resources, in the absence of any support that you would brag about, you have your work ethic. Bahamians, Nassauvians, Nassau villagers, they want to see you, they want to feel you, they want to feel connected, and that's what I did, and I think that is what yielded my second term.
What does a second term demand from you that the first term did not?
Well, I would say improvement on what we delivered on and what I delivered on. So in my first term, I created this air or this confidence in what it means to be the MP. Accessibility, responsiveness, all of the good things that we talk about, right? But actually bringing it into fruition. Multi-million-dollar community center. Nassau villages say, hey man, Mali, we support you. What are you going to give us next? What are the things that you see we can develop on or develop from? And those are my now soft skill programs, my financial literacy being run out of the community center, my developmental, let's say, pageantry for debutantes, gentlemen's training, cultural training, all now able, that soft skill program now able to be run consistently throughout the community.
When you talk about soft skills, why are soft skills necessary, especially now for our young people?
That's how you remain competitive. Soft skills make you marketable, but make you an attractive candidate for employment, right? So if we're able to really refine any rough product, any crude product, then we're able to make Nassau villages more employable. By extension, being more employable, they're now more competitive, thus adding and contributing to overall national development.
Having gone through the process twice, what is different between campaigning and governing?
Well, campaign is your rabble-rousing, that's your excitement, that's your pomp and your pageantry. That's when everybody looks at you, and pretty much you can ignite a room in a second. Governance is not that. Governance is your bureaucratic red tape. Governance, that's your checks and balances. Governance is the actual work to provide for your campaign promises, right? I can say and profess anything on campaign. I'm gonna reduce VAT and I'm gonna do these things. I'm gonna build a community center. And then you get to governing and the population is like, did you reduce VAT? Did you build a community center? That connection or that action following the campaigning is what governance is all about.
It's the action. Is there anything that, or are there any projects in particular that you were not able to complete in the first term that you have prioritized this time around or that you're looking to do this time around?
Well, one of my major projects, going back to the soft skill, was that I wanted to ensure that there was a consistent after-school program developed for my constituents, my younger constituents, and that there wasn't a physical space to have it be consistent, right? So we would normally have it for 3 weeks, 2 weeks, utilizing a church, but you have Bible study.
Yeah,
right?
No. You have just a living entity. They always have something going on.
We have limitations.
Yes.
So now I would say the things that I could not bring to fruition in that first term can now be run consistently out of the community center. and I'm able to keep Nassau villagers in their community.
Do you think that community center model is needed in more communities? I'm asking you about it because you mentioned it several times.
Yes.
So I definitely very proud of the accomplishment. But what has it done for the community itself? And do you see it as being a model for other communities that have the same issues that your constituency does?
Yeah. So the community center is a good practice internationally, right? It dissuades against gang recruitments and violence and just the deterioration of any community. From the creation of the Nassau Village Community Center, you see the creation of the Centerville Community Center. You see the creation of the Mount Moriah Community Center, the Angliston Community Center. You see forecasting in Golden Gates. You see forecasting in Elizabeth Estates. It's a best practice that has worked, right? So that Nassau Village model is now being replicated nationally already. But what it does, it provides avenues of hope. And I mean that across the board, avenues of hope. In the event that there's no internet at home, there's no electricity at home, your community center is there. So it acts as that avenue to kind of develop the Nassau villager or develop any Bahamian.
Who owns the community center? Who?
The government. That is a governmental asset. It's a line and budgeted item under previously the Ministry of National Security, but I think it's under urban renewal now. Mm-hmm. So just like your schools, just like your clinics, it's a public entity in the community.
So it passes along. There's that continuity of running the community center. Okay, interesting. No. Very important. I want to talk a little bit about your presence in Parliament. What are some of the pressures inside the House of Assembly that the public rarely sees and understands? Outside of the rowing.
Well, the spirited debates. The spirited debates. They're a part of your advocacy.
Right.
The reality is that we've all been sent there by our constituents to lobby on their behalf. So whatever is of interest to them, we must take it to Parliament and ensure that their views are being represented and they're being heard. So that's why you see sometimes it gets spirited, because I know without a shadow of a doubt that rent control is important to Nassau Village. Mm-hmm. It may not be a priority for Yakalani or for another, let's say, a sea breeze or something like that. Mm-hmm. But it has to be prioritized, at least from their MP, from their representative. So that's all you see.
So, but again, are there occasions where the interests of Nassau Village may conflict with other broader positions for the party or government, or are there times when the interests of Nassau Village are not given the same level of priority?
Well, I can't say that because between both the government and the opposition, or any government and opposition, we have parliamentary caucuses. Okay. So we have those type of group meetings where we express to the Prime Minister, or we express to colleagues what is of interest or priority to from our various perspectives. And that is where the executive or your cabinet takes those priorities or those contributions and actually craft a developmental model or the direction of where the country is going. So I don't think it's ever a case where it's not prioritized. No. The contributions are made within the parliamentary caucus, and then they're taken to the executive for consideration and also for the crafting of those special projects or policies, however it may be needed to be applied.
How do you balance the priorities of, or your in this case, the authority assignments or your ministerial assignments or obligations with your priorities within your constituencies?
Well, I balance them based on my schedule. Mm-hmm. So I am in my constituency office on Tuesdays and Thursdays, and I'm in the authority on the Monday, Wednesdays, and Fridays. And so by virtue of being present at both locations or in both capacities, I'm able to kind of just find that balance by force. because you must have the balance, or you can't have your portfolio without being an MP. And the portfolio directly benefits your position as MP. So that harmonization is just something you must find, that balance you must find.
I want to spend a little bit of time on some of the national issues that are still transcending through constituencies, and I would hasten to say probably all of them. But crime remains a serious concern in communities across the country. What can an MP realistically do about crime beyond calling for more police patrols or stiffer penalties? What can an MP really do to address those concerns, particularly when your constituents are victims of crimes and criminal activity?
Yeah. Well, there's not a one-size-fits-all for each constituency, and the MP must employ what works for them. We've had record lows in Nassau Village of violent crimes. I mean, almost non-existent, right? And that, I believe, is due to constant community engagement, those increased patrols, but also that door-to-door. You will always hear senior MPs ask, have you been on the ground? Are you listening to your constituents? When we do that canvassing and that door-to-door, you're sometimes apprised of issues that are developing before it even becomes an issue. So if there's somebody out of work and they're desperate in some regard, and you engage with them initially, then maybe you would be able to provide them work and a different avenue that kind of staves off any delinquent or criminal activity, or vice versa, conflict. I have an issue with Joe Brown. Joe Brown lives on the street over. I'm going to go get Joe Brown. You happen to have an encounter with the MP. Joe Brown's tree or something is growing on my lot, and the MP goes to Joe Brown and says, can we mediate this in some which way?
Let's meet in the middle.
Mm-hmm. Meet in the middle. And that mediation is what leads to conflict resolution, decreasing crime altogether.
And interestingly enough, those are the things that you don't hear about that an MP does. When you mentioned the level of crime, the reduced, almost non-existent level of crime, there was a time when I knew Nassau Village was a hot spot. Yeah. You and I spoke about it even before coming on air. It was a community that we were constantly in, covering crime stories, covering issues. But today that has changed.
Yes.
And you mentioned that the intervention being there, etc. Again, is that a model that needs to be employed in other communities that are having these similar issues?
Yeah, best practices. If it's working in one particular area, what does it hurt to test it out in another? I am proud to say that the entire constituency has moved away from that unfair stigma. Mm-hmm. It has moved away and shed those types of, I would say, biases, right? And now is being represented as a community of stability and safety, thus bringing in even more development. More constituents want to live in Nassau Village, and I think that is due directly in part to the safety levels and the stability levels.
Again, from a national perspective, with families confronting higher food, electricity, transportation, and evening housing costs, what practical relief do you bring to residents? What do you say to them? How do you have that conversation when they say to you, listen, the cost of living is here, these are my bills? How do you approach that as a member of parliament when you see it from them daily?
Well, Jerome, it's a real conversation. Mm-hmm. Point blank period. It's a real conversation, and depending on how you manage that conversation or maneuver it could directly impact you remaining an MP. In that people are sensitive. And when you're going through something serious, you expect your representative to empathize with you. Even though you may not be able to resolve the matter, I still want to feel as though my MP is considerate and sensitive toward the challenges that I face. Right? You ask, how do you have that conversation? The only way to have it is to have it. I speak to my constituents. We don't have to belabor the point. We don't have to beat around the bush. What is it that you're challenged with? Cut straight to the point and tell me. Once they get to the point, we decide these are our course of action. If it's employment, Mali, can I be employed at the authority? We don't have the latitude. However, we have Job Seekers Bahamas and the Department of Labor platform. If that doesn't work, I have community friends and constituency friends, private partners who may be looking to onboard persons. We work together to kind of unpack that issue and deconstruct it so that they understand, I hear you, I see you, and I take your plight seriously.
Do you, as an MP, do you have to have, I guess, those relationships and resources on hand to be able to draw down on as needed?
They absolutely help. Politics is about relationships.
Yep.
It's easy, and when I say it's easy, if I walked into a scenario where I had millions and millions and millions and millions of dollars, and I could directly impact my constituents' issue and resolve it, that's fine, good, well. That's one form of politics. But then there's another form of politics where my relationships from, be it my Masonic order, my fraternity, my domino friends, they all yield the same thing, and that is relief for my constituents. So sometimes I call and I say, man, I have this young man, he has potential, I need you to interview him, see if he's a good candidate. While I didn't directly resolve it with my own resources, I was able to use my network to bring about the same type of relief.
Even if it's just to open the door?
To open the door.
You mentioned rent control in one of your responses. Housing affordability and overcrowding are growing concerns nationally. What are you seeing within your constituency?
Well, what I'm seeing is true progress, and that the Ministry of Housing is now looking at those lots that might not have been developed to acquire them and increase the housing stock. Your constituency is directly connected to the decisions of government, right? So if there's an issue with housing because of the lack of homes that are created, or apartments, or even that the apartment expenditure or the apartment rent is too high, then we look at what are our alternatives. Can we put more Bahamians in home to make home ownership the influence to decrease rent and provide a control or create an ad hoc rent control, right? So in my constituency, what I'm seeing is not only the acquisition of dilapidated buildings to be restructured by the Ministry of Housing, but the expansion of the housing stock. If you go on Charles W. Sanders right now, you see the land being cleared to provide homes for Bahamians, thus removing them from being renters to being homeowners, thus ultimately leading to rent control. Because if I can get a home, then I must lower my rent to make it more competitive and attractive.
That was going to be my next question. How do you realistically arrest the high cost of rental properties, especially in New Providence?
Well, just like I said, you must increase the housing stock. The housing stock and the availability of homes directly impacts how lucrative, well, not how lucrative, but how attractive renting is. Most Bahamians will tell you, Jerome, I pay $1,200 to $1,500 for rent. That's the equivalent of a mortgage.
It's a mortgage,
right? Mm-hmm. So what would stop me from going to the Bahamas Mortgage Corp and getting a government finance home and now removing that $1,500, $1,200 rent from that particular landlord? The minute that starts to increase, you will see the opposite response.
But the barrier to that is the availability of homes.
Yeah.
The list is long. People have been on the list for years and waiting on homes.
Well, like you said, people have been on the list for years. This is our government's second term. We've had an aggressive, almost from the 90s. You have not seen this much home creation and development. And now you see that expanding because we realize that it is a concern and it is a desire for Bahamian to own homes. So our response is just that, providing the opportunity for more Bahamians to decrease that extensive list, whether it takes 2 terms, 3 terms, 4 terms. We're putting Bahamians in homes.
Outside of the community center, which you're very, very proud of, what on the soft skills, is there something within the Nassau Village community that I can identify that you say, you know what, it's unique to us, and I'm especially proud that we were able to do it?
I would say we were able to overcome the stigma that you originally alluded to.
Why is that important?
Because it increases the sense of pride for my constituents. There used to be a time when I initially became the MP where persons would dismiss applicants and applications from Nassau villages because of those unfair stigmas.
Job applications?
Yeah, man.
Really?
Yeah. For whatever reason. Now, I see an increase on the demand. Oh, Mali, send me for a person. Send me a couple of resumes. There's now an interest in removing a residential barrier from my constituents, and that is something that I'm sure is not unique to Nassau Village in particular, but from my perspective, I can say that is something that we have overcome, and it's yielding record numbers of Nassau villages being employed.
Very positive news. And that's important because I think, showing up for a job is important, but if there is that bias just based on your address, that's something you can't fight.
No.
Final question. At the end of this parliamentary term, what measurable changes should the people of Nassau Village use to judge your performance?
I would say the infrastructural creation and responsiveness. The reason I say that is everybody will come on the eve of elections and promise you the world, right? I'm going to bring forward this, I'm going to actualize these things and then
take you to space.
And take you to space. But then you look at who delivered for you. It may not be a big thing nationally, but for my constituents, they know that their MP is someone who delivers for them, whether it be job creation, whether it be some form of relief through connections, whether it be a positive word or inspiration within me just being a young MP at the forefront, battling for them either at parliamentary caucus or even in the House of Assembly. They have a representative that is working for them, and they should measure me from the energy that I had in 2021 to the energy I have in 2031.
Jamahl, I want to, as we wrap up, I just want to thank you, first of all, for coming on.
Yeah.
And I was very deliberate in what I wanted to do post-elections because I wanted to bring on the show younger members of parliament, those who are returning. Hopefully we'll get to some first-timers. But individuals like yourself who are in politics, who are young, who represent the future, because you are the future of Bahamian politics. However you choose and however you whatever path you choose in politics, I think Beaches and Parks is providing you a good platform to do that. But I appreciate your openness and honesty about what is happening within the constituency. For far too long, people have complained that the members of parliament are elected and they don't see them. And I don't just mean showing up to the funeral and coming to the repast and bringing a case of soda, but doing something.
But those are important. Those
don't get me wrong.
Those are important.
I know you also have plenty of funerals.
Those are important.
That you show up to, but not just showing up, but showing up and building communities. And that's what constituencies are. No matter which constituency you're in, it is a community at the end of the day. So I applaud you for the work that you do. I encourage you. Politics is not easy. Politics in the Bahamas is not easy. But I encourage others like you to get in and keep working, because that's the only way we are going to improve the Bahamas. For far too long, we've had a status quo, and a lot of our politicians have existed as they have existed. But I think the electorate is demanding more. And I think, if you and others like you continue to get into the communities and work on an individual basis with people we could really, really see a significant change in country, because it has to begin within the communities.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So thank you for coming on.
Thank you.
Looking forward to what's happening with beaches and parks. If I see anything on government's big, a message. All right, so thank you very much.
Thank you.
All right, stay with us. We're going to have some final thoughts right after this. Our parks and beaches are more than amenities. They are shared pieces of the country we are building and visible evidence of how seriously a government takes the quality of everyday life. For Jamahl Strachan, that responsibility now exists alongside another, representing the residents of Nassau Village and confronting the difficult realities that no park renovation alone can solve. The priorities have been outlined. The true measure will be what is delivered, what is disclosed, and whether the public can follow every step of the journey. We thank Jamahl Strachan for joining us and answering our question. And as always, we thank you for watching. On behalf of the entire On the Record team, I'm Jerome Sawyer. Good night, and we'll see you next week.